Hello everyone, this is Professor Smith, and I'm going to go over how to complete the personal inflation rate template. So the first thing I want to do is look at the first row. What you're going to list in each column is a component of the CPI basket. There is I think a pie chart of that I put on Blackboard, or a quick Google search of CPI basket components will give a list of them, and I have that right here to show you if you're on the right track. So for example, that would be things like food and beverages, housing, apparel, transportation. So what I want you to do is take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total components of the consumer price index, and you're simply going to list those categories in the first row here. So you can see I gave us 2 of them already, and then you would add, for example, the apparel, the transportation, etc. in the remaining columns. What you're then going to do next is try to figure out how did your cost of consuming goods within each component of the basket change over time. So to kind of make it simple, what I want you to do is in each category, think of just the one good or service that comprised the majority of your total expenses within that category. Just literally one good or service. So for example, let's suppose that the professor decided on average to maybe spend, I don't know, in every month, let's say, maybe I go to Bear's Smokehouse 4 times. Maybe that's my splurge or something like that. So I'm going to literally put right here 4 meals per month at Bear's Smokehouse. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to compare the cost of that in the current period, for example today, to a prior period. Now from this week's reading, that prior period could be 12 months ago. That's the most common way to measure inflation. Or you could look at it, what we call month over month inflation, and compare the cost of that to last month. You can go either way. I typically recommend doing the 12-month prior because that's the way inflation is most commonly measured. And if you do the month over month version, your numbers might not be different enough to make any meaning in the final answer. So let's suppose I think on average, I buy the 3 meat special, let's say. That costs me, let's say, about $22.99 each. I think that's what it is. And I'm going to multiply by 4. So that would be a monthly spend at Bear's. Okay. Now we want to compare that to the cost of that same quantity of meals 12 months ago. Now you don't have to overthink this. I'm going to kind of guesstimate that I'm pretty sure the 3 meat special was something like $21.99 or something like that 12 months ago. So I'm going to say, okay, now the cost is $21.99 per meal instead of 22, and I'm going to multiply that by 4. So literally 12 months prior, the same basket, the same food item cost less by that amount. Now again, you don't have to kind of overthink the numbers. In a few cases though, you could actually look it up. For example, suppose gasoline is one of your major energy or transportation expenses. If you actually look up the average price per per gallon in February 2024, it's actually a little bit lower than it was, for example, in January, February of 2023. So ideally you would look up some prices, but again, don't bog down in trying to find those numbers. Now what you'll do is you'll do that same exercise for the remaining CPI component categories. Okay. Now as you fill in the remaining cells, I've set up a sum formula in column J that will do the math for you and simply add the total amount spent. Now at that point, once you have those 2 sums, okay, all you have to do is run the CPI formula that we're learning this week. And if you look that up, what you do is you start with the number 100 and you simply multiply by the ratio of the cost of the basket today to, meaning divide by. Let's see if I can do this right here. Okay, so the cost of the basket today, Excel is being a little bit difficult here, that should be J3 on mine, okay, divided by the cost of the basket in the prior period. The prior period is what we call the base period. So basically, conceptually, guys, the CPI, inflation, is simply measuring how the cost of a basket has increased today compared to some base period. So if you do that, you're going to get what I call your personal consumer price index. Okay. And now if you're watching this video, I'm going to give you a little shortcut. Because the CPI is always 100 in the base period, and it's risen in my little example here to 104.54, that's actually an equivalent percent, if I just move the decimal over, of 4.547%. So my personal cost of living would be about 4.55%. And that is really all there is to it. It's kind of a way to personalize the CPI number, which doesn't always apply to every individual directly, and just trying to personalize that concept a bit. So your income would have to grow by that percent over that time period for you to maintain the same purchasing power that you had in the prior period. All right, so that's all there is to it. So after watching this video, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next recording.